Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order and ask the city clerk to please call roll.
Commissioner Galt?
Present.
Commissioner Guess?
Present.
Commissioner Henderson?
Present.
Commissioner Wilson?
Present.
Mayor Bray?
Present. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the next item on the agenda is personnel actions, and I'll ask the city clerk to read the motion and call roll.
A proposed motion of the Board of Commissioners to adopt personnel actions for May 11th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Guess?
Aye.
Commissioner Henderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Bray?
Aye. Thank you. So the purpose of this meeting really is it's a special called meeting to talk about the budget, and so I'll turn it over to our city manager to walk us through, to give everybody a little bit of background. Maybe Jim will do this, but all the commissioners individually have had budget meetings, try to get an idea about what's going on, and so everybody had input. So this is our first chance to get together and kind of compare notes and talk through some of the items. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, what you have in front of you is a document similar to what we saw just a few weeks ago as we went individually, as the mayor said, through the budget meetings with the individual commissioners. We have we'll go through the spotlight again, another 30,000 foot view of what the budget entails. We'll take a run through the general fund. We'll look at the Board of Commissioner priorities and how the budget aligns with those priorities. Then we'll look at some budget modifications. Modifications we made at the staff level based upon your input during those meetings. We'll look at the personnel summary for some changes, modifications being proposed for next fiscal year. And then we'll talk about outside agency funding, what that looks like for the year. The grant and aid program, where we've identified the recommended agencies or organizations to receive that funding. Back in our individual meetings, that was just basically a placeholder of 200,000. We actually identified those applicants for that funding at this time. Then we'll look at the capital projects and purchases. And then whenever you have questions as we go through, just ask them. We do have the financial team here as well as our directors are all here too. If you have individual questions for departments, you can feel free to ask as well. So,
Great, thank you.
So moving on for the budget spotlight. So this did not change for number one. We're still projecting a slight decrease in total revenues for FY22 compared to FY20. As I mentioned before, we're trying to take a more accurate look at our finances, not looking at 21 being more impacted by COVID, but looking at 20 to get a better feel for how we're doing financially. Proposed general fund portion of the budget is a 7.2% increase over that same time frame of pre-COVID-19 FY20. If you look at it compared to last year's budget, it'd be a 12.2% increase over the FY21 budget. The proposed investment fund portion of the budget is a $5,285,000 compared to $5.5 million for the actuals in FY20, so a little bit of a decrease. The proposed budget contains all annual debt requirements in the amount of $3.6 million for the year. The annual pension contributions does include a 12% increase being required. That has a financial impact of $850,000. That's the one where I'm hoping next year that percentage increase will not be the full 12%. However, that is the self-imposed cap. So it could be 12% again. But this year, of course, FY22, it is $850,000. Hopefully FY23 will be less. The proposed budget contains a 2.5% COLA increase for all the contractually obligated bargaining units that we have, IAFF, the FOP, and ASME, and also for non-represented employees. The proposed budget thaws the remaining frozen positions in Team Paducah. This thaw and pension increase represents the lion's share of the annual budgetary increase, and we'll see that as we go through the general fund. One note, though, on that, hearing what was said during the conversations in the meetings, we want to make sure we do that very strategically, making sure that we just don't do a automatic thaw, July 1st, and then basically we're back to where we were pre-COVID. We want to make sure that we're very intentional and look at each position and the merits of thawing each individual position prior to doing that. And I anticipate some will remain frozen moving forward. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to personnel. The proposed budget still includes a significant amount of funding for current capital projects and some new purchases. These significant projects have been measured against the Board of Commissioners' priorities to ensure alignment, and you'll actually see that as well when you look at the Commissioners' alignment. The budget includes a 10% reserve for the general fund. When we initially met, it was a 12% reserve. We did reduce that to a 10% reserve. We actually had 12% in FY19, 20, and 21. Prior to that, it was 10%. This proposal is taking it back to 10%. The proposed budget includes money allocated for our community partners, and as well as I said before, the $200,000 for the grant and aid applicants, for a total of $1,458,250, which is a $25,000 decrease compared to last year. The proposed budget projects taking the property tax compensatory rate plus the 4% later this calendar year. That decision will come back to this body. The proposed budget utilizes unreserved cash balances in the amount of $3.6 million to balance. We're required as a local government to have a balanced budget. So we'll be utilizing cash balances as well as anticipated revenues to match up with our anticipated expenditures. So that's going to take 3.6 out of our cash to do that. And that includes monies that we received through the CARES Act this previous fiscal year. That does not include money from the upcoming American Recovery Act. So that's money that's not included in this budget that we don't know for sure what that's going to be at, if it's going to be the 4.8 million or the 6.5 million. We're hoping to have more better numbers tomorrow. We actually have a webinar with the KLC tomorrow afternoon on that to see what that looks like. So I'm hoping to have some concrete numbers tomorrow. Continue to move down. The city's portion of the E911 subsidy this year is $1,115,465,000. That will come from the radio fund. The remainder will come from the general fund. So the general fund is subsidizing along with the radio fund, the E911. However, just make note of that because that $465,000 is coming out of the radio fund will not be there next year to come out of the radio fund. So it's going to put a bigger task on the general fund to subsidize that 911 fund. And the city reduced our projected revenues this year. Last year, the city reduced our projected revenues by 10% last year, looking at what COVID might do to us. And the mayor asked us to kind of look at, comparatively speaking, how do we do, or how do our projections go? And we actually did a lot better than we anticipated. We had just a 0.5% decrease comparing revenues for FY20 to 21. So we brought in more money than we anticipated that we would. Still a decrease, but it wasn't 10%, which was a good thing. So we'll just dive down a little bit. If you look, the next page shows the general fund, what's proposed. You'll actually see the actuals on there for fiscal year 18, 19, and 20, and then you'll see the revised budget highlighted in gold for 21, and then you'll see the proposed budget for FY22. And next to that, you'll see percentage change. Now, that far right column really kind of tells the story. That percentage change, then you can look back from the far right all the way to the left to see the cost center, if you will. So the first one's administration. That's a 10.2% increase between this proposed budget, and the revised budget. And then finance is a 12.7% increase. IT is a 29.3% increase. City clerk CX is a 13.2% increase. The planning is a 14.7% increase. Police is a 9.7% increase. Fire, 8.2% increase. Public Works is a 9.8% increase. Park Services is a 6.1% increase. And then Cable Authority has a small decrease of 3%. And then we have the Human Rights is basically a break even. Engineering is a 16.4% increase. Human Resources and Risk Management is a 40.3% increase. And then interfund transfers is a 55.9% increase. And a lot of that, as we talked about before in our meetings when we met individually, most of those increases are personnel driven. So basically, we're talking about restructures, new contracts for the contractual employees, the compensation study that we had, and then the thaw, the thaw of the frozen positions, and actually incorporating those into the budget. We're seeing those increases. So a lot of the operations and maintenance within those line items for each cost center stays flat. You know, there's a few projects that are coming out there, we'll see in the projects, but most of what you're seeing there, those increases are due to personnel, whether that's the changing in the pay scales and pay structures, as well as the, a few promotions, and then filling positions that are unfilled. And if you looked at I thought it was very timely too, the financial statement that was released today by the Finance Department. Looked at the bottom of that for the key performance indicators, the KPI that came out today. You can see kind of the staffing at the bottom of that. I should have brought that with me, but it talked about the amount of staffing that's frozen currently, and you can see the impact of that. And the bottom of that, the actual amount of staffing that's budgeted right now. So it's, even though the numbers here, I think it was like 320 something. Do you have that with you, John, by chance? And we only have like 288 positions actually filled, and that's the difference. That's why the actual is so much lower than the proposed. It's just, there's positions that are on the books that are authorized, and you got to fund them, support them, but they're not actually here. So you're not paying for them, that type of thing. So kind of keep that in mind as we go through. Now also, Audra talked about during those budget meetings, she talked about the advanced salary slippage, you know, trying to project forward. The police department was one of those departments where she projected forward some advanced salary slippage, saying basically, you know, you want to get fully staffed, we want you to be fully staffed, but reality is you're never fully staffed. So instead of budgeting up to fully staffed, we're going to budget you to here, because you're never going to get that money, and that way it enables the city to use that money elsewhere. And so even though you're trying to get fully staffed, you just don't get there. So that's one department we're able to predict and project that at the advanced salary slippage, as John calls it here. But other departments just happens, just organically. You just don't get there. You know, right now, what we're experiencing too is a lot of what the community is experiencing, what the state's experiencing, what the nation's experiencing, is you just can't fill bodies, you can't fill jobs, you know, and we're having that same issue. You know, there's vacancies that we have, we can't fill them, you know. Talked to Amy with Parks today, you know, we talked about the condition of Oak Grove Cemetery. So what's driving that? What's reinforcing that? And it's the bodies. We've thawed, you know, the positions for that, for our seasonal help, but thawing it's one thing. Being able to fill them is another thing, you know. So we're trying to get those positions filled, and we're really having that problem too with the swimming pool. As I sent the thing out, you know, to you guys last week about trying to fill those lifeguard positions. We have the positions thawed this year, we just can't fill them, and so that's a lot of that stuff. So that money is there appropriated in here, but to actually spend it out, you have to have the employees to give it to. That type of things. You guys have any questions about the general fund?
Yeah, before we move forward, I wanted to point out, and we talked about this, that the Human Rights Commission from 2018 to what we're proposing in '22 has consistently decreased. It's almost less than half, if you will, about half maybe. So I wanted to make sure, and I understand why, that's been explained, but I wanted to make sure to make a point that when we come back for the next budget time, that the Human Rights Commission would be fully funded. I think that's important. I think a city has to have a Human Rights Commission, and it suggests a lot to not have one.
Well, I would support that. I think we need to do some research based upon, what's happening in our city, what's happening in other cities. Excuse me. I know there was some debate about, what that commission does versus what the state is responsible for, what's getting done, what's not getting done. So I think there needs to be considerable research done.
Yeah.
So we're prepared to have that discussion. I just don't think we're prepared to have that discussion.
Yeah, I don't think we are as well, but I think one of the things we talked about was some of the challenges that the Human Rights Commission has had in the past making sure that board members, whomever they might be, will be trained, all of that stuff. And once that is done, then I think that should be enough research to kind of help us get back to where we need to be in that particular area.
We do have one, a commission, but it's not fully staffed.
Not fully staffed, right?
Right, that's what you're wanting to get it back to fully
Yes,
staffed.
fully staffed.
But we do have a Human Rights
Right,
Commission.
we do have no, I don't know if that's correct. We do have a part-time employee in the office, but to my understanding that there is not a board. All of their terms have expired, and they have not met in quite some time,
Except for one.
except for one, okay.
So, but we could make those appointments without a full-time director, couldn't we, to go ahead? I mean, many boards, until you just continue to serve until someone else is appointed in your place. So those board members would still be on, or could be.
From what I
Or
understand from the
reappointed.
city manager, obviously, you correct me if I'm wrong, that we probably could function with a board without a director. But the issues and the challenges that we've had in the past has been an issue of training and just understanding roles.
Okay.
And so that would not happen again. We would probably need to make sure that there's some training that takes place. But my point is that we can't neglect having a fully staff and a full board for the commission like we do for others.
Okay.
Any other comments or concerns about the general fund? We'll move on down. Thank you, Commissioner Henderson. The next one you'll see, which this really excites me here. I think we really started a good thing over the last couple of years and continuing that same thing, really trying to put the money where you guys want it to go, and trying to make sure that the money that we have available in the budget really aligns with your priorities. What we've done here is we've captured in how the money in the budget is aligning with your priorities to show you guys that we're putting the money to work to accomplish your priorities. Minority inclusion, that's really just starting the process for diversity inclusion training for our city staff, our city team. So basically all the employees will be trained. We actually had $5,000 in there, if you recall, before, and then Mayor Bray actually brought it to our attention. He said, I don't think that's going to be enough. It was interesting when we said, well, working with the trainer, that works with other cities, and we're finding out pricing. Well, the pricing came back that Mayor Bray was correct. It was not enough. It was going to be 18 to 20,000, but based upon the amount of participants in the training. So we moved that up to 20,000. You'll see that as an adjustment. Downtown, we have the Entertainment Destination Center funding in there for continual funding. We have the downtown development programs, which is going to be inclusive of the upper story living, the facade grant, roof stabilization, and downtown business grants. Now, it did come up during our meetings with the mayor as well, as far as the effectiveness of the downtown business grants. I did reach out to Katie and talk to her about those, and she advised they are very effective, and that really aligns well with one of the commission priorities of getting those net new. I think it's 10 net new businesses for this fiscal year. It's a tool to help us get there. And so she asked that we can keep that in. So that's what we haven't proposed still, is that $45,000 for the downtown business grants. And we have the $50,000 for the TIF administration in there. That's for our ongoing contract that we have. South side enhancements, this is really all new. This is really stepping up and trying to we've heard concerns from the south side region, and this is really trying to put money towards meeting some of those concerns. Again, this is just one small bite of the elephant. This is getting the process started. We'll be creating some new programs. We have money set aside there for business grants for the south side. I think probably for the first time in a long time that's happened, if maybe historically. We have money set aside there for beautification, foreclosures, demolitions, as well as a homeowners incentive program. Following that, we have the remote workers incentive program, which is going to be brand new, and we hope to have a proposal for the board to consider here coming up in our first meeting. I think is in June. Is that correct? So we're working through that still. We had a meeting internally on that, and we have another meeting coming up, but we're getting close. So looking at really marketing the program and incentivizing the remote workers within our community. Try to basically attract remote workers to our community. The next, we have the communications enhancements. We have $23,000 for various tactics identified within the communications plan, really increasing our outreach to our citizens, trying to promote and share what we're doing. And then the city facilities, having money set aside, not just for in the project account for repairs that come up, but actually having some proactive monies there to make improvements to our facilities that have been identified. Again, this is another case of eating an elephant one bite at a time, just basically doing what we can on an annual basis. And the next thing we have down there is annexation and planned growth, and looking at setting aside money intentionally for annexations. In the past, we've basically used cost centers and project accounts for this. This is actually creating its own project account and investing towards those annexations and making sure we have the monies available for those logistics and administrative costs to do those. And the goal there for the annexations, of course, is 6 new ones this year, and I believe we have 1 completed so far, so we have a ways to go still. But any questions about how they align with your priorities? We'll move on down. Next, we have the FY22 budget adjustments. Really, we took from your conversations that we had with each of you individually, try to kind of figure out what we can get in there, where we found alignment, where we found like we can make some progressive moves to kind of meet your desires. We reduced the 12% minimum cash reserve to 10%. And then what we did was realizing that we had a concern with trying to fulfill an obligation we have with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the floodwall project, as well as a contract we have for the flap gates and sill closures. How do we get that money and make sure it's there when the bill comes due? So what John, myself, and Michelle and Audrey really sat down and talked about what do we have cash on hand? What's not obligated cash on hand that we could apply towards this project? And we were able to come up with a $2.9 million in the general fund this fiscal year that we can take that's above the required reserve, the 12% required reserve, and actually take that this fiscal year and move that into a project account. And that would not even impact our FY22 budget. So basically, we can take that project and say, here, cash is set aside, it's in a project account, and we can expend that out when necessary over the next couple of years when those bills come due. So basically, we'll be making that project whole. Now, there could be, in the future, some change orders that might, tick that up a little bit. That's outside of our control because we only pay a percentage share of that, but we'll have the lion's share set aside to do that. And that gives city staff a peace of mind, gives me a peace of mind as well, knowing that our obligations will be met. Utilize $5,000 of the $200,000 grant and aid proceeds to partner with Paducah Housing Authority in their Wi-Fi project. They had a request that came in late that they were not part of the grant and aid application process, so they came in separate for us to try to help them out. They had it's a $10,000 annual expense. They needed help for half of that this fiscal year. $5,000. We were able to take that, basically carve that out of the grant and aid process. To be able to support that. That's going to allow them to continue to provide Wi-Fi throughout their complexes, as well as maybe eventually open it up to all of the residents. And anybody who's driving in the area, parked in the area, they'll be able to tap into that as well. So it's a good thing for the community. This is kind of going back to what one of my former commissioners, Commissioner Sarah Stewart Holland, really wanted to increase the Wi-Fi capacity of our community to make it more accessible. I think this goes hand in hand with that. Moving on down to number 4, remote workers incentive program. Changing that from $50,000 to $100,000, just trying to have a dynamic impact. I know that was talked about. I think it was Mary Bray had a concern about whether $50,000 would be enough for that, and the answer is we just don't really know. But we really want to make sure we do have an impact and we can incentivize. The goal is 25 to 50 families, and I think that's a very good goal to have to be able to bring them into Paducah. That requires, however, just a one-time only decrease in a very similar situation, but it's instead of using the money to go to the WKCTC scholarship contribution, it would take that money and put that into this new program. So just a one-time decrease for that. So it would drop that from $125,000 to $75,000. Next, we have a $100,000 Riverport grant match. This was brought to our attention by Mayor Bray as well, that they were applying for I believe was it a $6 million grant at the Riverport?
No, it's more like 15.
15, well, very good. They were going to ask the city to be a local match for that, for $100,000. And we actually built into the investment fund, utilizing some monies for the Federal Home Loan Bank new grant program we're going to put in for. And as I said before, that grant's not required, so I feel comfortable that we should flip that to the Riverport, and then we can work with the Federal Home Loan Bank on their program. And we have a meeting with the Federal Home Loan Bank coming up next week, so I'll sit down and talk to them about that. But it's not required. One would make us more successful with this other program, and I still think we'll have success with the other as well. So, eliminate the proposed 15,000 citizen survey project. We did that. Actually, it was good because we need to increase the money for animal control. Animal control, of course, is we got an estimate, came in late during the budget process. It's going to be 220,000, a little north of there. We think 220,000 will get us close compared to the 205 that we projected. So this came in from the county, so we took that 15,000 to adjust that line item. And then we had decreased the city administrative contingency by 15,000 to 235 in order to increase the diversity and inclusion training, which is up top, which we talked about, a previous sheet. And then decrease the commission contingency by 25,000 to 0. This is from a recommendation from Commissioner Gass, and increasing the city administrative contingency from 235 to 260. So basically what that move is done for is it just makes it more accessible. The city admin contingency is kind of like we use it as like almost like a catch-all type of thing, like what's contingency. So basically, if there's a project that needs paid for, we could say, okay, where's the funds for this? Well, we don't have it in the budget. Well, let's use the contingency. So then I would bring it to you guys and say, hey, we have a $40,000 project we want to do. Can we use the contingency fund? You've seen those emails from me before. Also in the past, I've got emails from the commissioners saying, hey, we want to do this, where can we get money for it? So let's use the contingency money. So it's there for us to do things with. However, the commission contingency is a little more tight. So basically to do that, it would take this body to pass an ordinance. So it's not as fluid to be able to get to that. They're both still protected, but one's more liquid, if you will, than the other. Instead of taking a month to spend it out, it'll take 5 days to authorize the expenditure.
How much of our city administration contingency fund have we used from this year so far?
I think we've about tapped it out. Yeah, we've used it for multiple different things. It's been very productive for us. I think we've used it for the first year's payment of Retail Strategies project, and we've used it for what was the most recent one we did? Animal control increase, and then there was another one we. Annexations, and then something else. There's a larger one that we used. I can't recall what it was for. Yeah, so they're all usually surrounding contractual or economic development.
Yeah, I need to correct myself. I don't know, on the Riverport grant, it's not 15 million. I can't remember what the number was, but they had to come up with a 15% match, and they were going to different people looking for the local share, and they asked the city and the county both for 100,000 each. So I don't remember the exact number, but it wasn't 15 million. It was something less than that.
Any other questions or comments about that one?
Do we have a new memorandum of understanding or contract with the animal control? We've increased animal control, and I'm just wondering what the city is getting for that.
That's a wonderful question. The answer to that, a short answer to that long question is no. So we have an expired interlocal governmental agreement with the county that we're in the process of renegotiating. It's called a stalled out. I've put my offer on the table. It's Steve Doolittle's desk, waiting for that to get resolved. So it's kind of sitting there. I think they're waiting for their agreement with this is just me thinking outwards for them. They're trying to renegotiate terms with the Humane Society. So I think they're trying to figure that out as well. But as far as the pricing goes, we're still abiding by the pre-existing agreement. And so that's basically they're saying, this is what we believe it's going to cost you based upon your past utilization. So that's what that number reflects. But as far as a current agreement that's not expired, the answer is no, but we're still honoring the previous agreement for them to provide animal control service. Any other questions on those? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, the personnel actions. Personnel actions, there's a few changes you'll see in here. The first one is I put on there, before it was thawing all remaining general fund positions beginning July 1st. I added some verbiage in there, gradual thawing of all remaining general fund and E911 full-time and part-time positions beginning July 1st after fully demonstrating a need for the reinstatement of the vacant positions. And I put on there too, it's going to be a very intentional process. We're going to meet myself, Michelle, and Stephanie Suazo. Sorry, Steph. We'll be meeting next week to kind of look at what that process looks like, to strategize over that process, realizing that our personnel costs are continuing to climb, and our revenues aren't keeping up with the personnel cost. And so we got to do something to see if we can proactively try to abate or mitigate that increase. So we're going to look at what that can look like, citywide, and bring back a proposal for this board to look at and consider over the next several weeks. It's going to take us some time. I got some thoughts I'm working on, but I just want to make sure that we're intentional with what we do prior to moving forward and not be too aggressive with just opening up all those thawed positions at one time. Maintaining the freeze for one full-time solid waste position, that's to be the laborer. That was brought to us by Chris Yarber, our Public Works Director. He said he did not want to fill that position this year. So that's kind of like, he's kind of like, has some forward thinking on that and looking at that. And then, as I said before, we do have the 2.5% COLA increases included. We are looking at authorizing a Parks Department restructuring that creates 2 assistant director positions, 1 maintenance, 1 recreation, and the elimination of 2 superintendent positions, and then 1 parks maintenance technician position and 1 administrative position. So basically, we're adding 2 up top, eliminating 2 in the middle, and then eliminating a maintenance technician and an administrative assistant position January 1st. With that being said, we're going to really kind of circle the wagons on that too, and just make sure we don't get too far out ahead of ourselves before doing that. So it'll be for future conversations that we'll have with Amy as well. We'll have elimination of 1 public works streets laborer position, and then basically just flopping that, if you will, or flipping that, if you will, with the creation of a business systems analyst position, and then moving Emma Shaw up in the organization to supervise that position. That's going to really give us some oversight of Munis, Intergov, and New World. And that's going to be a very strategic move for us to help us with our software systems there, because they continue to grow in complexity and size, and capacity is a problem. So it's going to really open things up for us and give us more oversight as we continue to roll out more software and more software, to have somebody, the ability there to have more personnel to kind of guide that ship, if you will. I think that's a critical position for us. And then promoting 1 customer experience representative, senior customer experience representative, and making that position salary. And that person will be able to kind of assist us with our after-hours initiatives. One thing that comes to mind is our off-campus Board of Commissioner meetings, which we're going to try to do quarterly to get them out there, and also to help us with our educational opportunities, and also the Citizens Academy that will get up and running again, post-COVID. And then we'll have the changing the senior planner position to a planner position once we get around to filling that. So there's some slight tweaks in the budget. Most notably, though, I think, is the thawing of all those positions, which we're going to be very conservative with and make sure we do it very strategically. Any questions on personnel or concerns? And I'll bring you guys back a very thorough plan here in the next several weeks that we'll talk about, and just kind of let you guys sink your teeth into it, that type of thing. Next up is outside agency funding. This is basically just a breakdown of the proposals in the budget, where the money is going to go to flow to outside agencies. And basically, you'll see at the bottom there, it's $1,458,250. It's in bold for FY '22 compared to the budgeted $1,483,250. So we have a slight decrease. We have animal control at the $220,000. We talked about that. WKCTC governmental access, which we're on tonight, for $85,000. Grant and aid program to be allocated from the general fund is $200,000. PATS for our transportation needs are a good partner for $215,000. Civic beautification, $3,000. Brooks Stadium, another good partner for $7,500. And I'm looking forward to seeing them back in action here just next month. I'm really excited about that. Who knows, maybe Mary, you could throw out the first pitch one of those games. All right. What is that look you gave me?
Bad arm, bad knee.
The rental fund for the Market House Theater, that's a multi-year contract or agreement we have with the Market House Theater for $25,000 a year. This is year 3 of 5. Airport operations for Berkeley Regional, it's $120,000. Community Scholarship Fund, I mentioned that before, be a decrease from 125 to 75, 1 year only. Wall to wall, $18,750, and you're going to be seeing them at work here pretty soon. So they'll be starting up, getting busy. So
They're down there.
They're there now. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And then GPED 250, which matches last year's, and I have talked to him about that and trying to make that contract a little more nimble. I'm going to work with Claudia about trying to make that contract more nimble for them so they can get their cash a little quicker, because they have problems getting cash based upon some holdups they have internally. And IDA, $154,000. That's that match we talked about a couple weeks ago, and basically matching what the county puts in. $154,000 is projected for next year as well. That's what we put in this year. And I have not yet paid that invoice, by the way. I'm still waiting for that match from the county before paying. Then Paxton Park, $85,000 for the Paxton Park. That's another one of our good community partners. That's a slight increase. I believe it was $75,000 last year, John, moving it to $85,000. So that is the holistic view of the outside agency fundings. Any questions about that?
I have a question on the animal control, because I know that's increased. So does the county put in the same amount as we do?
No, the county's, basically the way the agreement's written, it's basically based upon utilization, kind of like 911. It's like, we're a bigger user of 911, so we pay more money than the county does. And same thing with call volume for the animals. So we're a little bit bigger user, call-wise, generates more calls than the county. But we're trying
But they track that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay, I mean, I know that I've had people call me, you all have too.
Absolutely.
And emails about them, and I've sent them to the county, and sometimes they respond, sometimes they haven't. It's much about, we're down to like one person, maybe in animal control, so I'm just wondering on that budget, if we're paying $220, what are they paying to get it so that they have more staff? $220 for one person seems like a lot.
Yeah.
I would hope that they could increase that.
Basically, we're paying for the, we have to pay like that portion of their budget type of thing. So even though they have one staff, I think they want 3 to get there, so.
Are they trying to get there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that they've had some turnover, unfortunately, and it happens. And plus, they're in the same market we're in. You're trying to get full-time employees or part-time employees. It's difficult.
I think our goal is to get that, get our agreement renegotiated with them and get, figure out what's going on. So that's going to take a little time, but I think it needs to be a priority, so, among all the other priorities.
I understand it's a point of frustration, especially when people call for animal control services and, they see a dog and they want the dog picked up, and then there's some disconnect on whether that dog can be picked up or should be picked up based upon the condition of the dog and what the dog is doing, that type of thing. And then they don't see the animal control, but I know that Steve Doolittle is he's really trying to manage that program hard, and he's really given a lot of good oversight to them. They've changed the answering systems, where before they used to go to dead space or like a message. Now they got somebody that answers the phone, consistently for them. So he's making some really good improvements. He kind of inherited a system that was challenged. And,
Good,
so
okay.
he's trying, but then to have that staff that's there and consistent, then, of course, once you have your new hires, you have to train them. And it's a very difficult job to do.
Oh, yeah.
It's a calling almost for that job, So, and it's a stressful job. So I understand his plight, and I understand what you're saying too, though. If we're paying $220,000, we better be getting a pretty good service. The grant and aid program, the next one down is you'll see, basically you'll see what I have here is my recommendations in the far right corner for the funding breakdown. You'll see the committee recommendation on the third column to the right, what they recommended, and then some changes. Last year was the first year that we've received the committee recommendations, and last year, Michelle and I looked through those, and we honored all of the committee's recommendations. This year, I just wasn't able to do that, and I did meet with Ty and talked about the reason why that I did not do that. As you'll see, basically, one of the major differences was the funding of Sprocket. So basically, we had Sprocket was committee recommendation was at 0, but I had to find funding. So basically, we're taking $200,000 and changing it around. So basically, I'm recommending $35,000. That's for their operations. Previous year there were $40,000. Year before that there were $50,000. So basically, what the committee came back at 0 based upon the and I understand, but based upon the $900,000 forgivable loan and the $200,000 for the cash match. They thought the city was all in already, so they didn't think that we would have to support Sprocket again on an annual basis. However, what the committee was not privy to was that money was actually for the build-out, the capital enhancements and capital improvements portion of their operations, not for their day-to-day operations and their what they do. So I wanted to make sure that we had money in there available for them. So that's my recommendation.
I have a meeting set up with them on Thursday, but can you tell me how much skin they have in the game? How much, what the total budget is and what they're putting in? Commissioner Wilson, you may know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't have that.
I have
That'd
some
be a good
concern
question.
that over the last 24 months, we've put literally 1.2 million. After I
Most of
looked
that's
at
for
it, went through it, and it's a forgivable loan, and I get that, but we didn't take a position, we didn't do, I mean,
They are a nonprofit that we were promoting as economic development.
yeah, absolutely, I get that. It's
Um,
just, I always think if you have a good partnership, they have skin in the game as well. And that's my
They-
question.
They have received a lot of grants. I do know that they've been very active in getting grants.
But
to
no
help them, but-
community raising funds,
Yeah, but I know they are raising money in the community as well.
but you don't have any idea how much.
I think,
I know one pledge that's coming to them that they've mentioned to me, but I mean, it hasn't been announced
I
yet.
got you.
yeah, I think it's good for you to understand that better. I think that's great. Over the the $900,000 grant that we made to them, I think is very significant,
I do too.
to help them build that out. And, I know we're working with Codify over in Cape Girardeau. I've got a meeting scheduled to go over there and take a look at that, understand exactly what they're doing, over there. But at the end of the day, I feel like, they've got to raise the money themselves. We've got to pull back, over time. We want them to be successful, but I think we made a significant investment, and so we need to figure out how to do that. So.
I'm glad you're having that meeting because I think they can answer a lot of those questions for you. Also, they're bringing in companies that will locate to Paducah through their first 50K, and I think they've raised enough money for 2 of those that would bring a company here. So honestly, when we get ready to talk about the remote worker program, I hope that we can work that out where maybe they can participate in that if they're bringing in a company through that first 50K program that would bring them here, bring workers here. Maybe that's something that they would be eligible for too. 'Cause I'm not sure exactly on the remote workers. I'm looking at Katie how it's going to work, and I know we'll hear about that later. If you move here, you have to work remote to another city, or if you could somehow work through what they're doing with Sprocket. So I hope that that's something that we can work out. And I would encourage you to go to Codify too, to Cape if you get that chance, and see all of the results they've had.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
A few weeks ago, someone said to me, you guys have a great commission meeting, but y'all need to bring a little more life to the meeting. And so in my attempt to do that, I'm going to tell a story before I ask a question. That's okay. All right. One of my first meetings with Brother Rick Murphy, he said to me that one of the things that used to kind of get his goat a little bit is that the late Mayor Albert Jones would ask him questions privately. And then he said he'd be danged if he didn't get to the meeting and the late mayor would ask him the same questions. And he said that would frustrate him until he understood what Mayor Jones was trying to do. And that was, he was trying to make sure that even though he knew the answers to those questions, there may have been some folk who were listening, who were watching, or whatever the case may have been, who didn't know the answers. So that's why he did it. So, if you don't mind, I want to take a privilege of Mayor Albert Jones and ask a question that I've already got an answer to, but somebody else might want to know the same, may not be, not have the capacity, or they hadn't had the opportunity, rather, to ask the question. Here's the question. When I looked at this, the Grant and Aid program, the first thing that caught my eye was that there were 4 agencies that were not funded. One agency, I did not know their mission. I didn't know anything about it. So I called the city manager, or whenever we talked, I asked him about 4 agencies: Bloom, Child Watch, Heartland Cares, and Toys for Tots. Those 4 agencies got no funding at all. So my question was to Brother Jim was, tell me what the criteria is for the committee recommendations and then your recommendations. And he did do that. But one of the concerns, here's my concern, and I expressed to Brother Jim, that at least 3 of those agencies, Toys for Tots, Heartland Cares, and Child Watch, all deal with people who have extenuating circumstances, who have some special needs. And I was concerned that Toys for Tots, who deal with underprivileged children and providing, toys at Christmas or whatever the case might be, Heartland Cares, who deals with persons with HIV and AIDS, and Child Watch, who work with young people who have been, I think, sexually molested or whatever the case might be. Those 3 agencies who in my opinion, should have received some consideration, did not receive any consideration at all. And so I was interested in the criteria for how you all made the decision. I see what some people requested, and all 3 of those agencies, matter of fact, all 4 of those agencies requested some funding, but neither of them were given funding. So that's my...
Well, I would say they were considered. They just were not, they were given consideration.
Well, maybe
They just
I
weren't
used the
funded.
wrong terms. They were considered, but they didn't get it.
They didn't get funded. It was their first request for all of those 4 to be asking.
Yeah, those were new requests, yes.
And I don't know Bloom, I think some of them do get some federal funding as well.
I'm sure they do, yeah.
So I guess to publicly answer that question, yeah, so the committee goes through, they receive applications, and they basically look at the applications that come in and then compare that to the pot of money that they have, that type of thing. And so they go through and they try to align the best they can the request with the commissioner's priorities. So they look at the priorities of the commission and try to see which ones align up, and then they try to divvy out those monies. And really, they also give preference to agencies that we've supported over the years. But as you'll see, there's 3 new additional organizations. Yeah, Paducah Arts Alliance, the Paducah Quilts Murals, and the Paducah Housing Authority Wi-Fi. So those are the new ones. And the other ones, they really come through and try to kind of replicate what the other ones have received in the past, except for with some changes that have occurred, where you'll see like the Carson Center, they came in the same amount as last year, but my recommendation is a lower amount. And just really just trying to use that pie and moving pieces around in that pie. And so you can try to fund them all of them that come in, but then you're going to be really kind of dipping down into some of what they're used to getting on an annual basis, which impacts their annual budgets. And that type of thing.
Let me ask a couple of follow-up questions then. So start with the $200,000. How do we determine the total amount? And was that up or down? Was that down from last year?
It's down. It's down from like 204,000 to 200,000. I try to
Okay.
keep it about consistent.
Okay, and that's kind of how it's been the last
Last couple of years.
couple of years?
Yes. So it's really kind of, this is kind of like a carve out. If you look back on the sheet before that, where you have your total outside agency funding, you have 1,482,000, 1,483,000, then 1,458,000, 250. Basically, what I've been trying to do is take a hold of the outside agency funding and really just kind of get it narrowed in and consistent, consistent across the board. But making sure though that the partners we have, we stay consistent with them as well. And then 3 years ago, we set up this grant and aid program where instead of having people come into the mayor's office individually or to a director and say, I want money, let's make it a competitive process. And so basically, we modeled it after the United Way's competitive process, instituted a policy to do this. So now people know when they're supposed to apply. There's an advertised application period, and they have multiple agencies that do apply. And then really when they come in, we base their applications based upon the policy that brings their recommendations to us. There's 4 members on this panel that kind of go through all the applications, and they look at how the application compares to the policy, and then bring the recommendations.
So the competitive process you mentioned is, and the committee, how many people, who's on the committee?
4 people. We have Ty as the chairperson. I thought he was in here, but I think I lost him. And then Camera Davenport from Finance, and then we have Pam Spencer from the city manager's office, and then Claudia is the at-large. So
Okay.
Claudia actually kind of helps with that too, because she also serves with the grants committee with United Way.
Okay.
So she's got
got experience in that.
And then the United Way, they actually do interviews for their applicants. But we decided not to do that. We just went application only, just
So-
on the merits of the application.
Excuse me. So to Commissioner Henderson's point, the four nonprofits that did not, were not recommended for funding, was there a particular reason other than the fact that they were new? And I mean, was there something in the, as they went through the decision-making process? So just so all of us can kind of understand, because, I mean, there is a limited amount of money.
That's it.
That's
really kind of.
I have some input on that.
Okay.
Because I think some of these in the past were chosen, and it may have not been that they were left out. These have been chosen for many years because they brought people to Paducah. I mean, they were part of the arts. There used to be an arts consortium, and they took how much money. It was coordinated really by Michael Cochran of the Market House Theater, how much they put in on their budgets, their visitors. I'm not really sure the criteria. I haven't been involved with that as much. But it was like, if you look, Carson Center, Maiden Alley, Market House, National Quilt Museum, Symphony, River Discovery Center, Hotel Metropolitan, Yazor Art Center, those were all nonprofit arts-related organizations that the city supported to help bring people downtown and get people active. Some of these have been added in. The Paducah Arts Alliance, I think, is for a arts and resident.
That's right.
Paducah Quilt Murals is a first time because it's over there at the Convention Center, those murals that are on the wall, over there on the flood wall on the inside. And then the Salvation Army is a brand new one, but I think that's a study for the transition housing.
That's right.
So that's a new one that's coming in to help us serve that need.
So that Salvation Army is for the study?
The feasibility study.
They're for the
The
for homeless.
Yes.
Right. So I know, I have a little information on that. I mean, they have other community partners that are also going to help with that, so I'm not sure. I mean, we just need to validate that number.
The request was 37,500.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I've spoken with them, and I think we need to validate just exactly what the need is. So I think, there might be an opportunity to look at that.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim, for not getting mad at me asking you the same question.
I do it all the time, I just have never confessed
I'm just
that.
glad we got that. I'm just glad we got that plastic wall up there, so.
And then, to answer your question, I pulled back out that document for Bloom. They were actually recommended 5,000 by the committee, but I decreased that to 0. And then the Heartland Cares they requested 10,000. They were recommended for 1,000. I decreased that to 0. And then the Toys for Tots, 10,000 was the requested amount. They were recommended 0. I left it at 0. That was for a storage facility.
It's not for toys, it's for the storage facility, what they needed.
And for the Marine Corps, yeah.
And if I could just interject something, excuse me, Jim, on the Toys for Tots. I mean, I've met with them. They're going to have a motorcycle run coming. That's where their big fundraiser is, and the city's going to work with them this year, I know. So I think I mentioned this to you as well, but I think the city's going to be participating in some way to make sure that that's successful. They had a really good year last year in fundraising, so.
Yeah, I think we should. We have some good agencies doing some good work, and so when I saw those zeros, of course,
right,
I was interested in.
I think it's good to understand and validate the process, and and we're 3 of us or 4 out of 5 are new, and not familiar with this, so it's good to go through this process.
Yep.
And to your point, it helps liven up the meeting just a little
Yeah,
bit.
we got to do something to liven up a little bit. Maybe serve cocktails or something before we come in. I don't
That
know.
might be a little much.
Any other questions about the grant aid?
I bet you they'll all vote for it, though.
What they put in your water bottle?
Right, that'll work.
All right, let's keep moving.
All right, moving on down, projects and the programs. The projects, make a note of that real fast. Verify salvation only number. Okay. The projects and programs, you've basically all seen these before. There's a few changes. We've captured the changes already, though, when we talked about the changes. But we do have planned ahead of us a very busy year. 44 projects included here. Basically, really a lot of these, if you break them down, I was looking through them again today, really kind of hit on the head your priorities. And then, of course, some are purchases for our solid waste, and then, of course, some improvements that we'll talk about too for Noble Park. Looking at the finally doing the renovation to the basketball courts. I don't see where Amy's at. There she is. For Noble Park. I also put in there to making sure we're considering the pickleball multi-use in there. And then, of course, we have some improvements to the Oak Grove Cemetery buildings. Continuing with our ERP implementation. We've talked about the trainings, the replacement of our rollouts, and then I will talk to Chris, offline about maybe looking at what a rental program for our commercial dumpsters looks like. I know Commissioner Guest and I, we talked about that in our meeting. And then replacement of some obsolete, outdated equipment for the solid waste department.
Jim, I tell you what would be helpful, so some of these are duplicative of the thing that that are in the budget, proposed budget.
Yes.
So the items that are not in there, or that we haven't
Talked about?
that we haven't talked about, maybe you could go over those. I mean, I see.
I'll do it right now. So we have in there demolitions, citywide demolitions is number 15. Basically, that's, we put in money every year for demolitions throughout the city. This year, we actually took 50,000 and made that, spearheaded that into the south side region only, and then 50,000 that could be used citywide. So That's something that we'll continue to, we're keeping the same number, 100,000, but we're just dedicating or concentrating 50,000 on the south side. Number 16, weeds and debris. We have 20,000 in the budget to help us for our mowing and removal of weeds and debris within the city for the lots that we have to take care of. Foreclosures, 25,000 is number 17. That's basically citywide as well. We do have money set aside in the south side region for that, actually 35,000 this year, targeted in the south side, and then for the rest of the city, which could be used in the south side too, 25,000. Street rehabilitation, number 18, $1.4 million for our streets program within the city, and that's going to include Bridge Street. And I think, what did you say Bridge Street was, Rick? Next phase of Bridge Street, how much was that going to be?
About 300,000.
So 300,000.
It's going to take the lion's share of our budget. We're doing another 1,000 feet. We're going from Hayes to Clemens.
And the 1.4 on street rehabs, is that about what it is every year?
That's our target number for every year.
That's our target number.
Yep. Last year, we didn't get there, but this year,
We didn't spend it last year.
we didn't actually budget that much last year.
We didn't budget that much.
We cut it back because of COVID.
Okay.
But we're not done this year.
Right,
We still got
right. I understand.
several bills coming.
The Oak Grove Cemetery buildings repair, that was, I just briefly mentioned that before, that's actually to go in to do the interior of the sexton's house, as well as doing some work on the maintenance shed over there at the Oak Grove Cemetery. The Bob Noble Park basketball court, I'll say that again because I'm excited about that one. That's actually going back in, it should have been done years ago. I know that request has been in the budget since I've been here, so we're going to honor that request this year and redo the basketball courts there at Bob Noble. And actually put in potentially a multi-use court on one of those basketball courts for pickleball, which we believe we can get potentially 3 courts inside there. Is that right, Amy? The software upgrades for our ERP system and the software timekeeping for the ERP system, that's continuing our project there, are basically wrapping up hopefully soon, the ERP system. And the timekeeping will be a one-time expense to get that instituted for our payroll as well as the human resources module.
And that commitment on the software upgrade, is that 250,000, or that 300,000, is that kind of what we've been spending the last couple of years in general? And how much longer, how many more years will we committed to spend that?
Yeah, our contract is through the end of FY '23, but then, we'll have ongoing maintenance costs with those.
Will it be less than that? Or will it be, or is this going to, I guess I'm trying to get, is this an expense that's going to be ongoing?
Essentially, yes.
It's like the jelly of the month clip. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Right.
The software fees are about $300,000 a year.
The Team Paducah Financial Wellness Training, we didn't talk about that yet. That's an endeavor we tried to get going this year for an addition to our wellness program for Team Paducah, our employees. That's helping them to be able to manage their finances, to balance a budget, pay off debt, that type of thing. So it's going to be, they'll get wellness credits for that, but it's going to be a wonderful program to offer to our team. We have that in there for $15,000. And we talked about the solid waste replacements of the dumpsters, the rollouts, the compost yard scarab, and the knuckle boom. The compost yard office building, we have that in there again this year. We've had it in there the last 2 years. This year, again, it's in there, and that's going to be trying to replace the building out there at the compost yard and the concrete pad.
The 325,000?
Yes.
And where does that money come from?
Solid waste. So
It
basically,
comes out of their budget?
it is a solid waste expenditure.
Okay.
It's actually part of their budget. All of those I just mentioned, the residential rollouts, the dumpsters, the compost yard scarab, the knuckle boom, and the compost yard office building all come out of the solid waste fund. That's paid for by the user fees of our solid waste. So when you pay for the your residential waste or your commercial waste, that goes to that. Police capital set aside, that's something that the police tried to get in there the last couple of years. I removed that the last couple of years, but it's back in there again this year for $25,000. That's to help them to kind of save up, if you will, like a savings account for future capital purchases. Police in-car camera system and the police body-worn camera program, those are basically leases or maintenance agreements, if you will, kind of like our software, where they actually have they provide the service for us, and then replacement of the equipment as well. So those are annual costs. The police mask, gas mask replacement, that's basically to replace all of the gas masks within the department. Is that done every 4 or 5 years, Chief?
Generally speaking, yes, 5 years.
And then the city manager contingency, we talked about that already. Online document access, that's to really enhance the ability of our residents or anybody really who wants to get on our site to be able to access our documents online.
Right.
And that's just going to make it much more customer efficient and easy. Fire apparatus set aside is $275,000. That's for purchases of future large pieces of equipment such as pumpers and/or engines and/or ladder or platform trucks. And then the next one down, the fire pumper. We have that program to come out for $650,000. We do have another piece of equipment, major equipment coming out in FY23 as well, right, Chief?
Yes.
And then a brake, is that right?
Yes.
It's about 2031?
Yes.
Okay.
So the $275,000 goes into the fund, for future purchases, but this year we've got 650
We're sucking out.
coming out
That's right,
for the purchase of a pumper.
that's right.
Okay,
And that's all fleet money there.
right.
And then fire accreditation, 8,000, that's is that to complete the process or to begin the process?
Begin the process.
Okay. And then we have $20,000 in for IT for server hardware replacement. And that's really going to help us to continue to mitigate our risk of cyber attacks, if you will. And then to seal and stripe the Carson Center parking lot, as well as to construct a handicap ramp and parking spot over at the W.C. Young Center. That's inside the rental fund. So we have that incorporated in there. I don't believe it's going to cost $50,000, but we have that money in there for the rental fund to use for those maintenance activities.
So that comes out of the rental
The
fund?
rental fund.
Okay.
And that's actually, the rental fund is made up of proceeds that we get from our tenants. We have two, as Rick would call them, righteous leases, and they pay money in for a lease, and then we just basically take that money and put it back into the improvements in the rental fund. So the next one we have in there is the city website upgrade for $8,000, and all the rest have been talked about.
I have a couple of questions. When we talk about demo and foreclosures, demolition and foreclosures, and we've earmarked some for the south side, last year, how much was spent on, and you may not know the answer right now, but how much was spent on the south side? I mean, I guess because it's such a large area, my thought process is I don't want us to think we're really doing something if that's what was spent there last year. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm asking?
I can't tell you that, but I can tell you by concentrating it, then you know you're going to. If you don't concentrate it, you're not going, you might not.
It's trying to be more intentional that we're going to do something
where
on
you're spending it.
that on the south side.
So if you have $100,000, we had $100,000 in there last year for demolitions.
And we spent it.
And we spend
Right.
it every year.
Right.
So that's for citywide. So it could go citywide. And when we do projects, I know they bring me the contracts, they are citywide. So now by saying that we're gonna dog ear it, if you will, we're gonna earmark it for this area, so 50,000 of it has to come out of this area, we will spend it all.
Oh, I have no doubt we'll spend it all. I just want
Not
to.
enough to spend.
Exactly.
Is that what?
What'd you say?
Not enough to spend.
No, it's not.
So I guess the question is, so we've got 100,000 this year, we had 100,000 last year. 50 we've designated for the south side this year. So if we spend 50, and we don't know really what we spent on the south side last year, for sure.
No.
But if we get up to $100,000, we just quit doing demolitions.
That's right.
And they just stand there, so.
And does the
really,
same
we
thing
haven't
happen with foreclosures?
Yes. Once you max out, you max out. And we did increase foreclosures by 10,000 in this proposed budget. So basically, we have 25 and 25 instead of 50, right? Instead of 25 and 25, it's 35 and
Yeah,
25.
total is 60.
So are you suggesting that we increase both of those areas, demolition and foreclosures?
Well, I understand you're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. I get that. But that was my point. If we're going to be intentional about it,
then, and I wondered if you knew what was spent in that area last year, or if there was a way we could track that and find it out.
There is, but I don't know what the end game is going to be for you. What are you looking for as far as
To
like?
see if we need to spend more, just even if it's just this, if we can't find it this year, then we'll know
Yeah.
previously what the impact has been.
So I mean, if you can concentrate more in there and say, well, we'll do 75 and 25 if you want, but you could always use the other 50 for it also.
Yeah, I think the big question
gotcha.
is, what is the opportunity to, for demolitions everywhere? I mean, all over the city, not just the south side, and what is needed? I mean, this is what's budgeted, but the difference between what's budgeted and what's needed, there's a gap. And I'm not sure we can fill all that gap
Right.
all at one time, but I think understanding, the need is probably going to help us.
Again, it's an annual approach to a long-term problem.
Yeah, I guess I'm going back to when I served before. We always spend it all, and I don't know that we're making headway. It just seems like we're just, that's why I'm asking the question.
It's a great point. I mean, it's,
Well, and are we only demoing vacant, dilapidated locations too? Because, if you remember, I don't know, one of the school principals talked to me about when we demoed a housing unit, how many students she lost. And so I just want to make sure that we're demoing those that are vacant, dilapidated, and empty, and then let's try to do something with those lots.
That's right.
I've sent you Habitat for Humanity's information. They're interested in some lots if they can fit their houses on it and it fits in their plans of where they can build. That's one. If we could get some developers that would come in and help build on those projects. I mean, I want to turn them back into housing
Absolutely.
in the city.
Well said. Yeah, I'll get you those numbers, how much we spent in this current
Thank
fiscal
you,
year.
thank you.
I have really, think we've had a very thorough budget process. I was in there for 4 hours myself. I know you all, I think were at different times together. I really appreciate the work that the city staff put into this and all the department head managers and making it try to work so that we have a balanced budget and we can stretch it as far as we possibly can to help everyone. And I think, we want to grow our city. We want our city to be successful, and these are programs that will help make that happen. So from demoing to growth, those are things that are good. So I really appreciate all the work that everyone's put into it.
Absolutely, what she said.
well, it's a huge process.
It is a
And,
huge process.
so a lot of people put work into it, and I think we're all appreciative. I think, speaking for myself, this is my first budget. So, in going through it, I went through the 4-hour meeting, so now I've gone through a 1 hour or 2 hour, whatever this is, meeting, and I'm still discovering. I'm still learning and understanding, where the money is, where it comes from, where it's going, and how we make decisions. And so, it's presented to us as a budget, through a process, but, really, to Commissioner Galt's point, what is the opportunity to help shape the thinking, about the budget on the front end, and I think we're all learning on that. I mean, Commissioner Henderson made a good point. I mean, that's really in the same category. What's the opportunity, how do we make those, how do we think about them, and how do we make those decisions, and what's the opportunity for us to, to weigh in, and being fiscally responsible, but to weigh in on the process itself. So for me, I just say it's a learning, it's a learning process. We budgeted shortfalls in the budget for the current fiscal year, and I think it's safe to say we're doing better than what we budgeted, right? I mean, that's
right.
That's a positive statement. So, we're just going through that process and learning. I mean, I noticed that we're projecting a slight 1.4% decrease in total revenue in FY22
Compared to FY20.
compared to FY20.
20. which would be a more accurate picture than FY '21.
Right.
Yeah, which, I think you guys are at a disadvantage now too, because you're coming in right after
Right.
a non-traditional year.
Right.
You know, you'll start to see a trend line, you'll be able to have a better comparison this year compared in FY '23 compared to FY '22. And we'll be able to also project our revenues better as well. So what we try to do from the manager's office perspective is, the budget conversation starts in January with the staff level, and then it actually starts here. You gave us input, you gave my office input in January at the retreat. So you told us what your priorities were, and it's our job to fund them, to get money injected in there to them. Now, the finance team here, what they do is they identify what's needed for utilities, what's needed for personnel, and then they give the departments just a small spectrum, say, here is your cash to use. And then each department takes that small amount of cash and tries to divvy it up into multiple things they want to get done this fiscal year. And then they bring that back to my office, and we weed through it again. And then, so basically, I just want to make sure they're all on point, and they did a really good job. So I give hats off to the departments. They did a really good job also looking at your priorities and say, okay, now we have cash, and I know this is important to the commission, so I want to make sure we do this with it, we do this with it, that type of thing. And as far as the direction, we try to get that off of the priorities, and I think that really drives us. Now, personnel-wise, I think we have some work to do, and we'll get to that. So even though it's in the budget, doesn't mean we're going to spend it. That's the thing about a budget. You're projecting out revenues and projecting out expenditures. You don't have to spend it just because it's there. It's just a budget, It's what it is. It's a plan for us to work on, but we'll get it set, and then we'll continue to work on it.
I can honestly say that, when it comes to personnel, I concur with you. We just need to be careful about filling the positions. We want to be smart about it. In everything that we do, I think the city needs to become more efficient, in any way, every way we can. And, sometimes it's the use of technology. I exchanged emails with Amy about robotic lawnmowers out at Oak Grove Cemetery. I don't know if it pays for itself or not, but it's just an example of something that might pay off, in the long run. And I think we need to be exploring things like that. And I know we're making Amy, you're getting a couple of assistant department heads, and so that, I quizzed Jim on that a lot just to understand. I think that makes, I'm convinced that's going to make you more efficient. So that's, in all that we do, we just always need to look at figuring out ways that we can become more efficient. That's what every business does, what every corporation does, is looking at what we're doing, looking at personnel, looking at everything. And so that should drive us going forward, I think.
I agree, Mayor, but I'm going to see about livening up this meeting here. Commissioner Anderson, have you all heard the finger analogy from the city manager? Has anyone else heard that? Okay, so we had a very similar conversation about efficiency and how well the department heads are using what they have and trying to meet all the services and the expectations. But one of the things, and this stuck with me, and it probably will forever, he said, you've got to think about it like a finger. You've cut it to the quick. And if you continue to cut, he was talking about if we continue to cut without finding other ways to balance it, it starts to affect services, was his point. But he said it's like you've cut your finger to the quick. And if you continue to cut, you're going to get into the meat and the bone, and it will start to impede the way that it operates, the way your finger works. It clicked. I got it. I thought that was a great analogy.
No, I couldn't disagree with that. It's a great analogy.
Well, you don't think about it while we're doing this, but I think we're to the point where if we continue with some things, it will start to affect services. We have to be more efficient, but we have to be cognizant of whether or not, that the public's getting what they're paying for.
I'll call out Chris Yarber, and Refuse Department, here. I mean, I think Chris and his staff do a great job there. They're very efficient. They have the benefit of being revenue producing, and so there's just wherever there's an opportunity to become more efficient, we always need to be evaluating it, and we certainly don't want to cut to the bone,
Right.
where it hurts our services, unless there's services out there that we shouldn't be providing, which is a different conversation.
Right.
So we just always need to be evaluating what we're doing. But totally agree. Okay, anybody else want to liven it up? So Jim, what the next steps here, I think if I can just say, all of us need to still reflect on this budget.
That's right.
And there's still an opportunity for us to, to think about what we talked about here and have input.
That's exactly right. Just continue to bring back your feedback, and then the formal plan is that gives us time, the next several weeks, to be able to make more modifications, adjustments as necessary based upon that feedback. And then we bring back the introduction, the first meeting in June, and bring it back for final approval the second meeting of June. So we have a few weeks still before we bring it back for formal introduction the first meeting of June.
It's a good process.
Yes, it is.
And I'm on the learning curve, so. Any other questions, thoughts? Is there, Commissioner Guest, you don't want to liven it up? You don't want to pick a fight?
No, I won't pick a fight. No, this was, I guess this is my third budget, or, no, it'll be the fifth. But this is, I appreciate Jim and all the work that he really I think he went over to inform us and get us prepared for it.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, and I just want to, I've known this for a long time, but it just confirms, going through the process. This city financially is well managed, and, we are on top of our game, when it comes to our finances, and that has had a lot to do with the way that we came through COVID and the way we budgeted through that process. And so that it starts with the city manager and the staff, but Jonathan Perkins and the finance department, deserve a call out, in the way that the budget is managed. And so it gives me a lot of confidence, the way that the way that we've managed that, and so I think we're on the right track. So if there are no other comments, we'll have a motion, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Guest?
Aye.
Commissioner Henderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Bray?
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.